The Matrix Resurrections. Dave, I had never watched the Matrix movie straight through. I'd seen bits and parts on cable.
Don't say that. They're all going to leave.
So I ended up watching the original trilogy and then Resurrections. I have some thoughts, but were you a Matrix fan like right from the get-go when it came out?
That's a good question. So I'd seen everything already, and I did a full rewatch before Resurrections, including for the first time watching the Animatrix, which is also on HBO Max. And funny enough, I had not really been a Matrix fan as a kid. Like when it came out, I was young, but I was a Star Wars kid. I was a Lord of the Rings kid. Like Matrix just didn't really ever capture my attention as a kid, coming out when I was a kid. So I didn't really latch on to it till like I went to college and like just had grown up a little bit more. But I mean, the first Matrix movie is certified classic. Incredible, holds up so well. It's so fucking good. And I'm really happy that I'd done the rewatch leading into Resurrections. I feel like you appreciate more things about Resurrection, or at least what's attempting to do, if you were fresher on what had come before. And on the other hand, that might be a detriment to you if you don't really remember what had happened before and then watch Resurrections. But yeah, I really like the first one. I think Reloaded is an incredible action film. And, Revolutions, you're kind of lost in the sauce a little bit. The universe and the rules of it kind of muddy, but I still find it really enjoyable. And I look back on the whole trilogy fondly, just because it's an original creation with such a sense of style and place. And I mean, at the end of the day, the first Matrix is cool as fucking shit. Like the looks and the glasses, the black. Then how the Matrix itself has like the green hue and yet looks more lifelike than all the scenes set in the real world. Like there's so much to appreciate, I think, about the first one in particular, of course, which still stands up today.
Yeah, the first Matrix, my first time watching through, really stands out. I think the story was surprising a little bit, kind of boiling down to like true love being the thing that helped Neo unlock his powers. Feels a bit corny, but whatever, it's fine. That's kind of how a lot of these stories really go. But I think the first one is great. Like you said, Reloaded, probably my favorite action scene from the whole thing is that highway chase fight. Just like
you cannot touch that scene.
Yes, so like all-time scene. And then Revolutions, man. Like you take the things that really work well in the first two, and you're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna put Morpheus on the side and put like Neo and Trinity together in like 3 scenes, and then it's just gonna be like robot squids everywhere. And like I was like,
a lot of Zion.
Yeah, a lot of Zion. Neo loses his eyesight, like it's just, or his physical eyesight, but can see the Matrix. It's a very bizarre thing.
Yeah.
I think that, and then that final battle between Neo and Agent Smith is just not as satisfying as you'd hope it would be. But anyways, brings us to Resurrections. Were you in 2021, Dave, like, I need a Matrix reboot?
It's funny you say that. If you recall, on youtube.com/nostalgiapod, we discussed the first rumblings of a Matrix 4 being in development way back in 2017. At that time, Michael B. Jordan was attached to play, was it Morpheus' son, another young Morpheus, whatever it was at the time. Zach Penn had been attached, making that script. He is not involved in the Matrix Resurrections. And we had said at the time that there's potential there, need to know a little bit more about what they're trying to achieve. I wasn't necessarily clamoring for more Matrix, but I'm not opposed to it either, because it's one of those things where once you've made a Matrix Revolutions, it's okay to make more, because you'll probably do better. So, I don't mind. And nothing can sully the Matrix 1, just the way nothing sullies Jurassic Park or Empire Strikes Back. Like, the classics are still the classics, And even if the sequels don't live up or don't all the way live up to what started it, it's okay, right? So I was interested in it. And I think another part of that too is the Wachowskis as filmmakers march to the beat of their own drums. Resurrections, just Lana this time. Lily's not involved. But Wachowskis, for better and for worse, singular filmmakers that have a point of view, have a style, all that, right? Sometimes manifest in an amazing way, like in Speed Racer. Other times not so much, like in Jupiter Ascending. So you take the good and the bad. So I was still, compelled because again, I love the first one so much. And like I think that the DNA of the first one, right? Like the action, so indebted to Hong Kong cinema and the aesthetics again, like there's just a lot of things I'm really interested in. And I didn't really care that, yeah, like the red pill has been largely co-opted into different meanings nowadays
Mhm.
culturally on the internet and things like that since the first film came out. But I was still having an open mind about Resurrections and definitely did not expect Resurrections to be what it is, which is definitively not Star Wars: The Force Awakens, definitively not Jurassic World. It is not that kind of pseudo reboot type sequel. It is really anything but.
Yeah. Uh, I think what made me most interested in this was the Keanu Reeves like renaissance of late.
Right, of course.
Obviously the John Wick star, just someone who went from being very lambasted, and even if you watch the original Matrix trilogy, you kind of see why he got some of that. It's a lot of like, oh, or
Yeah.
Morpheus, that sort of acting where you're like, it's maybe not the most nuanced line reading per se. But as he's aged and kind of come back into acting and in high profile roles, he really seems to have found this, style that it really works for him. And I was like, let's see what he can do playing older Neo. And I think he's still pretty good in this. I didn't necessarily love the movie, but I also thought it was better than it's probably like tied for second, I'd say, with Reloaded.
Yeah.
It's up there.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the thing that I liked most about it was the first hour where
Yeah.
you have
Oh,
Neo.
totally.
Yeah, you have Neo who's been red pill or yeah, red pilled,
Blue pilled. Blue
blue
pilled is.
pilled. Sorry, blue
Yeah.
pilled. Neo's been blue pilled. He's in this world where the Matrix was this video game he designed, and he has some sort of psychotic disorder, and he's talking with Neil Patrick Harris as his psychiatrist, who's kind of helping him understand like all of that was just this psychosis you were in, and this is reality, and blah blah blah. And at him trying to figure out like what the Matrix actually was for him, and seeing Trinity, who's now named Tiffany, and making sense of why he feels
Mm.
like he knows this person. Like that all was like so much more interesting to me. You get so much more Yahya Abdul sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yahya
Abdul
Abdul
Mateen.
Mateen the second,
Yes.
as Agent Smith turned Morpheus 2 of some
Yeah.
sort,
A Morpheus program, not the actual human Morpheus.
and just looking cool as shit in every single scene he's in. And like uh you also get Jessica Henwick as Bugs, with her
Yeah.
blue hair, just killing it. Like that first hour is really really great, and then I think it kind of devolves a little bit in the second hour and 20 minutes or so. But really I enjoyed this as a part 4 to the story. And even though there's some time off, I think there's some really nice touches to it, really well told. So overall, pretty satisfied. Maybe didn't love it, but was satisfied. Is that how you felt as well?
Yeah. So I think what you say is right that the beginning of Resurrections is really superior to the second half because that's where the most interesting things are going on. Notably, that it's a meta deconstruction of the Matrix as a franchise.
Yeah.
Lana Wachowski being like, well, Warner Brothers was going to make it with or without me, so they're going to make it with me, but I'm not going to make what they thought I was going to make.
Yeah.
And it kind of presents this really interesting, I think, catch-all thing where it's like film fans, critics, we appreciate something so bold like that kind of idea of making a movie like that, right? And it largely butts heads with what fans want, which is to, or many fans want, which is to be in more Matrix, a la Jurassic World and The Force Awakens. Now, where I think there is some criticism to be laid is where you get to the second part of the film, and Matrix Resurrections not shot on film like the first one, shot digitally. The action just doesn't hold much of a candle to the action of Reloaded and especially the first film. And that's inherently a bit of a problem from a watchability standpoint, from an entertainment standpoint. Watch the dojo scene in the first Matrix film. It's just an absolute classic scene.
Yep.
Watch the remix dojo scene, which I think narratively was cool in Resurrections, but watch the actual scene. It's just not as compelling as action. The camera is a lot more zoomed in. We don't get those wide shots of the whole dojo, seeing Neo and Morpheus looking at each other. It's not made as in an appealing way. And whether that's also part of the meta commentary, whether that's part of the deconstruction to make a Matrix movie with mediocre action, it doesn't make the movie enjoyable. So, and I wasn't, bored or anything. It's not like it's shit, but it's maybe an instance of taking that a little too far, I think, for the movie side of things. So I think the other part of that is like a lot of the action outside towards the even further in the end of the film when we're like in San Francisco and stuff. I was like really dark, and kind of hard to see. And I saw this in the theater. I didn't watch it on HBO Max, but it was still kind of like, yeah, this is a little like harder to track, and like it's kind of there. It's kind of still Matrix action, but it's not. Again, it's not like the first film. So I think that's kind of where like the good and the bad of this film meet, where it's still a messy Wachowski film at the end of the day, but oh, is it thematically bold, and I just can't help but appreciate all of that.
Yeah, the meta context of it all is really really well done, and I think cleverly told. And I really appreciated all of that, and I think it even makes you kind of look at the the Matrix and yourself as a watcher of the Matrix a little differently. Like the neologist, I forgot what that character's name was, but I thought that was like a really funny part because
Right.
even just before this, I watched a couple of the movies with uh, my fiance, and she immediately went and like read all these articles about, or theories about the thing, and I was like, this is something fans did where they like wrote papers and
Yeah.
like theological papers about all this.
There's so much great scholarship on the Matrix, video essays,
Mhm.
all that. It really is a really compelling thematic text.
And I just really thought it was uh clever to have it be this video game that to
Yeah.
Neo feels so much more like it, like real life, and to having to like seeing the way that him taking the blue pill is like
Right.
making him like a zombie, so to speak. I just thought that was all really well done. The second half, I agree. I think the like swarming feature that they kind of mentioned, how that's so much worse,
Mm,
actually really detracted. Whereas like that fight in Reloaded with Agent Smith and they're swarming, the CGI in that, looking back, would be so much better to be like redone now. But it was still like pretty cool because you basically see like Neo as like a leveled up fighter, kung
yeah.
fu
The
artist.
one.
And in this, it's really just like it's just like hard to like kind of tell what's going on in a lot of scenes. Like there's a part where Bugs is like in a car being swarmed, and it's like I don't even really know like who's in the car with her. It's very like confusing at points. And then it kind of ends with them on that rooftop, which I didn't really find to be a super satisfying ending between Neo and Trinity. And pretty much, I don't know if this is them, trying to play down Neo's abilities at this point, because it seems like obviously Trinity is now the master of the Matrix by the end of the movie, as opposed to Neo. He really was just doing a lot of the like shooting whatever energy out of his hands move, and
Yeah.
that
He,
seemed to
he
be
never
it.
uses a gun, quite notably, in this movie.
Yeah, and so it's it's a little different, and I agree that the action is just not nearly as compelling as in past ones. But my expectations going into this weren't super high. I didn't really know what to expect from this, and I was still pleasantly surprised. I think some of the characters that were introduced, Morpheus as the program Morpheus, and
Mhm.
Bugs, Jessica Henwick especially
Yeah.
were great. I've also been seeing a lot of people praising, or at least like making note that Priyanka Chopra Jonas was in this
Yeah.
as
Adult Sati.
yes, which I thought was kind of a nice touch. I expect to see more of her if they make more of these moving forward.
Yeah.
What did you think about her? Any thoughts?
She doesn't have a whole lot to really do, just kind of exposition-y, monologue-y stuff. I was actually
Hmm.
more interested in seeing old Niobe uh,
Yeah.
as Jada Pinkett Smith, and just seeing like how they've rebuilt Zion as in a new place, IO, and kind of seeing like the technological advancements. Right, there are now some gray areas with the Matrix. There are machines that sympathize with the humans in the real world, and programs can be manifested into the real world, and you see them doing things, and that's how we can still kind of have a Morpheus figure throughout the whole film because you can still see Yahya Abdul Mateen in both settings, right? I think that all that's kind of like cool for the lore and stuff. Like, hey, they're not eating gruel anymore. That's great. Good for you guys. Keep up the fight.
Yeah.
you know, uh, I like seeing the Merovingian actually come back in that middle fight where they first fight Jonathan Groff Smith.
Yep.
Just seeing the Merovingian kind of like bully pulpit more like themes, and like he's really like saying stuff about the sequelization and franchise nature of Hollywood, about how like everything sucks now and it used to be
Mm.
so much better back then. Like he's really like just nailing the themes of the first half Resurrections home via his monologue. And it's cool to see that character uh do that because it makes sense for his character in the story to also be having that kind of point of view. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I also thought this was a good look for Jonathan Groff, who I thought
Definitely.
played the new Agent Smith pretty well, and we appreciate him as a performer. So I'm glad to see him getting some bigger,
Yeah.
meatier roles for sure. Any other thoughts on
Yeah. Well,
actors? Or
I guess the other question would be our new manifestation of the architect figure is the analyst played by Neil Patrick Harris. Definitely a
Mhm.
kind of off type bit of casting. Even Groff, to a certain extent, is a little bit off type for this, but he handled himself well. But yeah, how'd you feel about NPH? I think the analyst character itself, I think, was handled quite well. And because again, he's like kind of like in the beginning pointing all these logical questions back at Neo as he's trying to keep him controlled, keep him blue pilled, right? But how'd you like actually seeing NPH be the performer for that?
He's been so up and down for me in the movies he's been in. Something like Gone Girl comes to mind, where I really don't like his performance in that movie, although I really like the movie in general. I thought he was actually really great as the analyst in this. I, I do feel like the analyst is so powerful that at the end when Trinity and Neo come to just like kick his jaw off his face and stuff like that, it's a little bit like, oh, I don't know if that totally works for me, but I think up until that point, he's like super menacing and just like he's a really like aggravating villain, and that's
Hmm.
exactly how you should
Yeah,
want your villains to be. So I thought he was good. What about you?
yeah, no, I agree exactly with that. The other thing, cool thing I noticed is that most people probably don't notice this, but in the Matrix, Trinity's husband is played by Chad Stahelski, which is
Hmm.
obviously awesome for the many connections Chad Stahelski has to Keanu as the director of John Wick, but also as the original stunt double for Neo in The Matrix. Chad Stahelski really coming full circle in Hollywood in The Matrix. So cool to see him just have that role, being a Chad.
I was gonna say naming him Chad in that Matrix is really really funny. Good touch. So if you're a fan of the Matrix trilogy, you obviously have to watch this. And even if you're not, I think you could probably watch and enjoy. But um, some parts are going to be left, not make sense to you.